Hello there, and welcome to the REI Friends podcast. My name is Catherine Story, your host, and today I have a treat. I just finished speaking with Jenn and Joe. Hello there, welcome to the REI Friends podcast. Hi, Jenn. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Good. How are you?
We're
Fantastic.
so excited. I'm so glad. Let us know a little bit about who you are.
Yeah. Well, I met Joe in 2008, and so that was when my real estate journey started. His started a little bit sooner than that, but I will say we have learned a lot through the years, and we're excited to share a little bit about that. Currently, we live in Florida, so we can explain how we got down here. We do have two children, a boy and a girl, 7 and 9, and we homeschool them. So I definitely have some thoughts on that as well.
While being full real-time
Yeah.
real estate investors, we have a team that works with us for us, and we buy and sell houses all around the country, mostly in Florida, but all around the country now. And
Without banks,
yeah,
without our own
Yes.
credit, and
usually very little to no cash in a lot of our deals. So once we stumbled upon this method, it really helped us scale. But to kind of dial back, I got started in real estate growing up as a landlord's son and realizing a lot of the things not to do really early. And then in the year 2000, I was at a friend's house, and he and his mother bought some course on television off a late night infomercial that was describing how to make fast cash in real estate without using banks and money, which is perfect because I was so young. I didn't have money or credit back then. So this was right up my alley. I asked if I could borrow it. He was reluctant at first because back then it was like $300, but it was still brand new. He never even opened it. It was still in the wrapper, sitting in his closet collecting dust. So after a few minutes of me convincing him to let me borrow it, I watched all the tapes, listened to them all, read the books. A month later, I had a house under contract, and I wholesaled that deal. This was in the year 2000, so 22 years ago. And I was young. I was in my young 20s, and I made $15,000, which I thought I was rich at the time, right? And it was fantastic because I learned a lot. So fast forward, I got a job in the car business, working in finance. I bought my own house. 2008, I meet this young lady who had a job as a teacher, owned her own house. And a few months into us dating, I'm looking at buying another property, which was confusing to her because we both already had two houses. What do we need a third house for? But once I kind of explained what I like to do, she was, right on board. And it's kind of how I knew she was a keeper, because she was just dating me. And I was taking her some pretty
ugly houses.
ugly houses.
A couple I didn't go in.
A lot. But now, so we made some deals in 2008, 9, 10, 11. We saw the market declining. There was a lot of opportunities to buy properties. We were doing, which we didn't even know the name back then, but it was BRRRR, where we were buying them with cash. We were rehabbing it. We would end up renting it out, refinance it, and then repeat it, right? And we would do that because we were finding some deals. But with my job, I was in the finance end of it. So I was dealing with a lot of bankers, and I knew all the head, folks at the banks, presidents and vice VPs at banks. And eventually what they were telling you is a lot of them, they're going to eventually cut you off. Doesn't matter your credit. They're going to only give you so many mortgages. There were some banks who could do things in-house and portfolio, but it was going to become a little trickier, sometimes higher rates. And to scale, it was going to be very difficult. So Jenn and I get married 2010, start growing a family of our own. Jenn walks away from teaching, starts helping us full-time with real estate. And that's where we kind of had the idea of, if we're going to scale, the idea was to me to get out of the car business eventually. And if we're going to scale, how are we going to do it? And that's where, luckily for us, in 2016, after we had a lot of rentals and things like that, we were really looking at how we're going to scale our business. And that's how we stumbled across creative finance, right? The creative finance is the art of how to buy real estate without using banks, without using your credit, and a lot of times very little to no cash. And that's where was the appeal to us, because if we're going to scale, doing this BRRRR was so slow and it was so time consuming.
It was a pain.
And it was a pain. You are absolutely right. It was a pain having to rehab these houses too. And then when we learned that not only could we buy all these houses with out using banks, but we could buy beautiful turnkey houses in beautiful neighborhoods that need no work. And we could do it with no banks and without credit. I was like, sign me up, because I don't want to have
Right.
rehabs. So we started dialing in net 2016, started making these deals months later. And that's where our business started to scale. So in a few years, we've accumulated well over $3 million in just those deals in real estate, buying single family homes. And we have some really neat processes of how to buy them. Like you mentioned earlier, they're subject to, there's seller finance, there's wrap mortgages, there's so many lease purchases, there's so many different ways to make it happen. And it was learning all these strategies that really helped us grow our portfolio.
Wow, that's so amazing. I
Yeah.
love that. I've been taking notes the whole time because there's so many things that you went over that I think, and I know this, I have been interviewing people for a few months, and every time I interview a couple or someone that is doing this with their partner, it is strategic to have the right person. So not only is Jenn beautiful, right? But but she wanted to homeschool, but I just realized that she was a school teacher before. And since you're doing this business and you want to have the freedom of not dealing with banks and deal with your own way, when you're homeschooling, you also have the freedom that you can travel and you can do the schedule however you want. So that even goes into how your business can be the way that you want it to be, because you have that freedom as well. So you said that you guys met in 2008, and if people remember, 2008 was not so great in the market. So how were you able to, and I love the way you said there were opportunities, how were you able to see the market as opportunities instead of how everybody was looking at it like freaking out, like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Like the sky is falling kind of thing.
So there's always opportunity in the market. And what happened in 2008, 2009, and 2010, where a lot of the investors who are in it heavy before then were out of it. It took a lot of folks out. So what was happening was now, like in the last year or two during COVID, it was really hard to find a fantastic deal on the MLS. If you were going to find an amazing deal, usually you had to find it off market in the last handful of years because the market was so competitive. So back then, you could find fantastic deals on the MLS because there wasn't very many buyers, right? The banks were really having some hostile terms. Some were stopping doing mortgages altogether. So what was happening was the retail buyers, just kind of like what's happening right now, have pulled out of the market quite a bit. The investors have also pulled out of the market quite a bit. So what that left was, now it turned into a buyer's market, right? It went from a seller's market to a buyer's market. And in 2008, more in 2009 and 10, we saw a lot more of that. And I know when I met Jenn, we were on vacation in Florida in 2009. We rented a car and we were just cruising through some back neighborhoods. And it seemed like almost every other house was for sale. It seemed like almost every other house or every third house had a for sale sign in the front yard, which meant all these houses were for sale and there weren't any buyers. So you're able to negotiate some amazing deals back then. And the market ebb and flows, and it goes hot and cold, and it always has in the history. But at that point, we saw a lot of opportunities to really scoop up. And we still have a lot of those properties we bought back then, which were fantastic deals. So fast forward to even now, when the market started to shift, we really started some strategies of how to find off-market leads, off-market deals, how to really, scale a business. And the stranger thing happened because in the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, we were, signed up with more coaching. And that's the one thing Jenn and I always believe in, is being a part of masterminds, different coaching groups, and always trying to advance ourselves. And we just signed up for one then. We're really diving deep into how to market for leads through social media. And when we did that, the goal was eventually for Jenn to do this full time and to me get out of my job. And then COVID happened. And March 2020, the world kind of shut down. A global pandemic starts. Jenn was already a stay-at-home mom, right, with two little ones. And I was working full time as the finance director. My position moved up. And then when they closed down New York, they sent everybody home. And for a few weeks, we just kind of sat around looking at each other, trying to figure out what to do. And then she kind of gave me the kick in the butt I needed. She's like, you're not going back to work. We've been wanting to do this full time, and now it's go time.
That is so good. So Jen, how was it easy for you to make the decision to go from working outside of the home to work inside the home and homeschool the kids? How did that come about?
So homeschooling naturally evolved. We did the e-learning for a little bit in New York, and that just really wasn't working so well. It was really tricky to adhere to the teacher standards. I was a public school teacher. So once I started researching homeschooling, I realized like the sky's the limit, and you really have full control over how you want to educate your kids. Down in Florida, even more so. And our goal was to be able to travel. So knowing that, you have to be in school X amount of days legally, yada, yada. I saw that opportunity to really world school our kids and educate them how we see fit, and how better of an education can you get than traveling all over the world. So that's what led us down to Florida, was our 1 month stay in the month of March. And then we ended up staying until June, and then went back to New York, sold everything, and then moved back down here for good. So you never know.
That's amazing. Yeah, you never know. So Joe, when you said they sent everybody home, did they let you off, or were you working from home?
So at first I was working from home. And then what the dealership says that they're going to be closing and they don't know when they're going to reopen. So that's where I made the decision, to where I'm like, you know what, I'm not going back to work. Like, I had a very great position. I literally had lunch with the owner of our company a few weeks before that, and just about to receive a really big promotion and a big, step up. And when you're used to getting that monthly paycheck and you're a only, provider for the family, you depend on that. So where we made that decision to make that leap, if it wasn't for creative finance, we would have never been able to do it, because without having my W-2 job, I would never be able to qualify for a typical mortgage, or it'd be very difficult, right? So how are we going to grow and scale our business if I didn't have that job, right? To go to the bank and to ask for another mortgage, another loan. So when we were already, for the last handful of years, buying real estate without using banks, without having to use our credit, with buying with seller financing and sub-2 and wrap mortgages and lease purchases, once we already started doing that, we realized the sky was the limit. We don't need to have these jobs in order to buy all the real estate we want, and to buy more than we could ever want. So that was that freedom that we had. So we started buying these deals. We grew a team, because we had one of our coaches say that you and Jen can't do it by yourselves. You're going to need to have some folks around you to help you. And so we've grown a team around us. There's 12 of us right now. And with that being the case, we're able to do a handful of, 5 to 10 deals monthly, consistently, month in and month out. And that's where our business started to grow, to the point where we had this experiment Jen kind of talked about. We wanted to travel. So we were going to come to Florida for 1 month, the spring of this year, from March. And when we were working away from home and working down to Florida, we had a great month, had a fantastic month. And we looked at each other, and it was so nice and beautiful, Florida. We're right on the beach almost. And in New York, it was still freezing cold. We left, there was 3 feet of snow on the ground. And neither one of us had a desire to go back. So where we were staying was just at an Airbnb at a nice house. And we stayed for another month, and then another month. And then something where Jen just kept on randomly yelling. She's like, I'm not going back to New York.
I'm not leaving.
So with that being the case, we made that decision to go back to New York. And we had some of the 45 craziest days of our life, to where we literally drove back to New York, started sorting out what we're going to keep, what we're going to donate or get rid of, put our house in the market, sell it, had a house here ready for us, and then moved back to Florida. We did all that within 45 days. So we got back in New York beginning of June, and by mid-July, we're on our way back down here.
So I think it goes back to like that desire and purpose. If it's there and it's strong enough, I mean, you just make it happen. So, we're firm believers in no excuses. You take rest days when you need to, but it does take a lot of work, and it does take a lot of poignant effort. It's not just kind of like waking up, like, what do I do today? You really have to strategize. Even when he was working full time to be able to get to this position, it was working on days off, not having a lot of extra vacation time, and really utilizing extra money to be able to start building our portfolio at first, because we didn't use creative financing. But, now we know better, we do better. But it's really, go back to, if you have your W-2, start now. It just starts with one property. And that was for us in 2008, or for Joe, it was 2000. But for me, it's 2008. But yeah, and it's one step in front of the other, and not comparing yourself to anyone else's journey. Because I think sometimes you might look at us and say, oh, it could never happen. It can happen a lot faster. I know you interviewed Mike and Jay on another episode, and they are proven examples of how quickly you can scale if you put your mind to it.
So good. It is so good. So at what, you guys are doing well, you have a team of 12. At what point do you decide we need to teach this to other people?
It happened organically. We were sharing our story, during the whole lockdown and everything. We used social media, obviously, to reach out to sellers and buyers, but, Instagram became a great tool because we're social by nature. And so we would just hit that live button and we'd start sharing what we're doing. And I think it took probably 5 or 6, 7 people to be like, are you guys going to coach? Like, can we sign up with you? Like, what are you doing? Can you teach me? And so everything that we've done has been organic as far as that goes. We truly love helping others. And I think being servants of, just of this education, and really trying to show the best practices all around. So that happened pretty quickly on, and it's definitely been a ride, be able to help other people with their businesses across the country. And we've had students from New York to Florida to California and everything in between.
That's amazing. I love how you guys have kind of like allow things to happen, but you were doing things. It's not like just happen by happenstance, but you kind of being flexible enough to try things and then deciding what kind of life you wanted to have, which is so powerful and so inspiring. Like, you're like, this is the life that I want to have. This is what I want to live, and I'm gonna make this change happen. So Jenn, when you saw that Joe was sent home and he had the opportunity to go back, what made you say, stay, we can do this? Like, do you believe in what you guys were doing? You believe in him? You believe in the two of you? How was that process for you to encourage him to say, we could do this?
Well, the one thing about Joe is when he wants something bad enough, he gets it. My bottom line. And sometimes it's telling him he can't do it or he can't have it, and that pushes him harder. But, it had been a dream of ours to be able to work together. And it was just that scary leap to take. Like you said, that constant monthly income is what we relied on. And well, we weren't really spending any money because we were all stuck at home. So I thought, well, what better time than now? And we, like he said, we invested in ourselves and our education. I truly believed in social media marketing and being able to reach people in their homes, which is where everybody was at the time. And I felt like it was that, that whole notion of like, it's time to burn the boats. There's no looking back. You jump now and we're doing it together. And it was what it was. So there was no looking back. I mean, there's a couple of times where I was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Right. Any entrepreneur kind of thinks that from time to time, but for the most part, 100%, we've been just forge ahead no matter what.
I think it was helpful too. Like, we already had it. This is a side hustle going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I would always encourage anybody that's listening, and I would always tell everybody at my old job, like, no matter what your job is, your job could terminate you at any point. Okay. Your job, as far as I'm concerned, when I always say the word JOB, which stands for just over broke, doesn't matter how much you make, right? You're just over broke with your JOB. So my whole thing was forever is always have your side hustle going too. Right. And I would always tell this to the folks that I would work with in my old job, because you never know when your other job or things are going to happen quickly. You want to be prepared. So we already had this side hustle going. We already had the idea, notion. We already had the things in place to where eventually it was going to take me home. We just didn't think it was going to be so quickly at the start of a global pandemic, things that you can never, ever prepare for or plan for. And they did. And I think a lot of folks got sent home during that pandemic, and a lot of side hustle turned into some businesses for a lot of people across the country, around the world, because realizing that you're not getting that full life out of working for somebody else and making somebody else wealthy, and you're getting great pay and you're obviously, you know, doing well for yourself, but there's always more, right? And some folks who wanted more, this was a great opportunity, and we were as ready as you could be. And I don't think, honestly, if it wasn't for a global pandemic, I probably would have still been working at that job. So I'm glad it happened. And for that reason, I'm glad Jenn gave me the motivation and the support to say, like, you're not going back, dude. Like, all right, we're going to go do this.
Well,
Let's
when
get
he
to work.
got the promotion, we went and bought new suits, and I was happy and excited for him, but I was also like, my heart broke. I was like, no, like, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. He was gonna have to travel a little bit more. And I knew the hours were going to get longer, and the kids barely saw him as it was. And I loved being home with my kids, but they wanted to see dad. And he was always, he called it the fishbowl, you know, like in the glass office, like looking outside, but never getting outside. And just not how, you know, we're truly meant to live, I don't believe. I think that families should spend more time together and being outside. That's why we moved to Florida, so we could spend the majority of our life outside and getting that vitamin D and living life, because at the end of the day, that's truly what matters. And so he never got to wear the suits. Sadly, they're still hanging in a closet, maybe one day, but for now,
maybe one day. Yeah, the funny thing is, I'm glad that you actually wanted him home, right? So that's a testament to your relationship and how much you guys like each other. And also that the pandemic, I think what it did for a lot of people, it definitely did for me. It accelerated the notion that life is short. And many times we prolong things one day, right? One day I'm going to do this. And it's like, one day, when is the one day going to come? And a lot of people retire and they don't have the energy, they don't have the health, and something happens and then they're not able to do what they want to do. So I love the fact that you guys said, hey, our kids are little, we could do it now and do it together, which I'm sure makes it more fun because you already like each other. And let me know this, how do you guys complement each other in the business? Like, do you guys have areas where one is better or more apt to it?
First, before I let Jenn answer that, when you asked that question, we both giggled. So that's a great answer you're about to get.
There's trial and error, right? So if you are working with your spouse or a partner of sorts, you know, you just got to figure out where you're supposed to sit, and then you need to stay in that lane. I've tried getting on the phones. I've tried doing a couple of things that he's really good at, and that wasn't my thing. Like, he loves analyzing deals and talking to sellers, and that's really not my strength. I can do it, but my strength is definitely orchestrating everything, keeping everyone organized. You know,
I can definitely see that.
Yeah. If he's supposed to tell somebody something and it's not already in the Google Calendar, probably won't happen. It's not his fault, but that's just not his strength. That's definitely mine. But he will hash out whatever deal needs to get done and make sure things get to the finish line. So it's just finding out your strengths and then not pushing each other. You know, it's really allowing each other to grow into that seat and encouraging too. You know, it's easy to point a finger, but really my favorite thing is to say, like, make sure you're looking in the mirror and that you're really truly assessing yourself and are you doing the best job, and encourage your partner or spouse to be able to do that too, because, you know, that internal drive is really what keeps us going.
And I think not having a limited belief. Because when I met Jenn, she was like, I'm not a numbers person. You know, there's all these things that we always put these obstacles, these mental obstacles in our own head of these limitations of what we think we can or cannot do. And where I feel like is, you know, we should push ourselves. We should get out of our comfort zones. It's healthy to grow and it's healthy to do that. So sometimes you're going to be put in situations where, you know, this is something new to you. When something new happens, usually that's where some of the best growth happens, right? But there are some circumstances where I'll have like, hey, we just made a deal with a seller. I need you to write up the contract. And she's like, oh, hell no. I'm not doing that. Like, you do that. So there was some things like we just made sure we drew the line in that. But also Jenn does a lot of the traffic control. So like, if you want to book this with me, I would say reach out to Jenn and schedule this. Like, that's not what I'm going to do, because if you're trying to schedule with me, good luck. Okay. But we found out what our strengths were. We found out how to complement and work within each other. So if there's a call to be had, whether I'm talking with a buyer or seller, whatever, like, she can do that, but I love to do it. So why let me do the things that I love to do. Right. And that's where I feel like I thrive in that area, and I like being there. So when you're with a partnership, it is tricky, but it's the best way, because when you put those two heads together, you're sharing ideas, you're creating more than you would have just on your own.
But it's true though, because when we started our rent to own business in 2017, we're out there hanging these awful, ugly yellow signs with this phone number. And then that phone started ringing and he's at work. So I'm the one taking these calls and I'm like, I don't know the first thing about this, but you know how you learn? By doing it. And so, you know, I think that that's really important too, that you just fake it till you make it to a certain point. You know, I read the books, I did the education, but it's just like teaching. You know, I went to college for that, but until you're in front of a classroom with your students, then you're really truly learning the art. So you do have to put yourself out there. And then I think now the next step for us, the hard part for me is learning to really delegate. Now we have multiple companies and you can't be wearing all the hats. So it's being able to find the right people and train them properly and then really allow them to grow and to flourish as well. So that's kind of that next step for me to really embrace delegating and continuing that.
Yeah, that is the best, especially when you can do it. I had to learn the hard way, totally got burned out, and now I delegate most things. I found myself a couple of days ago doing something. I'm like, ooh, what am I doing? No. I gotta hand this off because I was getting overwhelmed, and I'm like, because I'm not supposed to, even though I can. So it's that reminder of I know I can, but should I? Especially when you know how much you're worth per hour versus how you can delegate that to somebody else that, you know, at a lower rate. So that's a good reminder. So how you guys manage the teaching? How do you guys divvy that up? Because I know in the business makes sense, but who does what in your programs?
So we do weekly one-on-one coaching with our students. So we meet with them every single week during their normal time, right? And then what we'll do is we do a once a month mastermind where we all meet together, which will be tomorrow night with our students. It's a private just for our students. So we like to keep that small because we understand that a lot of time goes into teaching somebody. You know, this goes for 6 months. So for the next 6 months, we're going to be like best friends. We're going to be spending a lot of time together. We're going to be an open book. You're going to get to see what we're doing at our meetings. So we invite you to a lot of those because we're one of the coaches who are actually doing the business. And there's a big difference between coaches who are coaching and coaches who are coaching and doing the business. We're one of the ones who are actually, you know, on the calls with sellers. We're the ones, creating pipelines for our CRM, all the different things with our team and ourselves. So we really want to make sure that our students get the most value because there's a lot of different coaches out there who will do big group masterminds. And I love that. But there's something about that one-on-one, which a lot of them don't have. And that's where I think of it as I would learn best with working with a one-on-one coach rather than in a whole classroom of 500 people, where maybe I don't ask the question because I'm embarrassed to or don't have time to, or even I might have a handful of questions, but they don't have enough time to answer everybody's questions, right? So I always feel like if I truly want to help people, and the coaching honestly is very time consuming, and for the amount of time we do spend doing that, it does take up a lot of time. So with that being the case, if you're going to do that, I really want to help people and change their lives like we have had happen to us. So we want to make sure that we don't take on too big of a class. We always purposely keep it small on purpose. We usually have a waiting list of people who want to even interview with us to even see if we're going to coach with them, which is a good thing because we only want to work with folks who are going to really work for it too. And that's some of the hardest thing about being a teacher in any profession, whether you're a professor at Harvard or at the local community college, or even at a high school or elementary school. You know, you're going to have the students who really work their tails off and bust their butts, and they come to class and they really want to learn. And then you have the slackers. And I'll admit, when I was in school, I was that slacker. Okay. That was me. But I also knew was when I was going to find an opportunity like this, like when we go to our mastermind groups, or we were just in one, we flew out to Columbus, Ohio 2 weeks ago. We walk in, we are the first ones in the room. There's 60 people there. We sat in the very front row for the 2 days. Always the first one there because I want to soak it all in. I want to be the best student I can be. And so what we found with working with personalities and different personalities, we seem to gel the best and work the best with folks who are like us. So if we give you tasks throughout the week to do, and we meet next week and you're like, well, I didn't do any because I wanted to take my dog to the park and there's this book I wanted to read and I'm picking tomatoes in the garden. Like that doesn't work with us. And we are not going to like that. And we're going to, have some issues with that right away. We're here to learn and we're here to help people. And that's where we really, I guess, gel best is with the workers, right? The ones who really want to make that difference and the hustlers. So we really almost try to not say talk you out of coaching with us, but we want to weed out the folks who are just trying to casually learn, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that makes sense. So people that are listening or watching and they're like, okay, this subject to or creative financing sounds very exciting. Where will you direct them to go? Like, what should they start doing before they even hit you up to work with you? What books should they be watching, reading, or like what content that you guys have created? What should be their first step?
So we have creativefinanceplaybook.com. creativefinanceplaybook.com. You can check us out there. We have a lot of content there. Same name on our YouTube channel, Creative Finance Playbook on YouTube. We put a ton of content out there. We have a Facebook group. It's Creative Finance Playbook with Jenn and Joe. We put out every Tuesday, I go live going over various different topics, having Q&A right in there. We put a lot of information in there too. And it's just really to help folks because how I got into this, luckily I just happened to stumble upon something, right? And then it opened up a rabbit hole and I dove deep down into it. Then realized after watching a lot of the free content, it was time to take out the credit card and start spending some money because I'm going to take this serious, right? So that's when we started paying for coaches. We started paying for mastermind groups and we still did 3 different ones this year.
But all at different times. So I definitely say check out all the free resources too. Right. Instagram, I try real hard to keep up with mine. So you could definitely, like I said, scroll back in 2020, we went live a lot more. We had a little more time on our hands, but there's a lot of free content. We've done some master classes. So if you're kind of dabbling and you want a little bit more of an education, they're reasonably priced as well. But like Joe was saying, the coaching is really very in-depth. It's more one-on-one and it's for those go-getters who are ready to put it into action and not someone who's just kind of like, oh, I think I'm interested. So definitely be thinking about that as well, because there's a lot of free content. And I think it's important to get a good understanding about what these are. I mean, when I first started, I didn't even understand terms. I was like, what does terms even mean? Like the word was I was a literary major. So for me, terms was, a simile, a metaphor. No, terms here is completely different, right? So once you really learn the ins and outs of the vocabulary and understanding some more of the real estate background, it's time, like Joe said, time to start paying for some education and really take it seriously, because there are a lot of nuances that you need to just make sure are clear with attorneys and title work and all of that. So.
Right. And also the accountability. It's nice to have a group of people that you can cheer on and share your wins. And if you have questions and knowing that you have to show up and you have to share, okay, what did I do? Did I get it done? Kind of thing. So that's always awesome. So you have a 6-month program. Is that a rolling 6 months, or are you taking people after the first 6 months are completed?
Yeah, so we've done 3 rounds so far. We're completing our 3rd round here coming up. And so we'll be enrolling in the upcoming, probably November, December, I would say. We're trying to just get a feel for what that looks like. We're switching things up here in our personal business a little bit, talking about getting an office down here in Florida. So we want to make sure we're all good to go so we can definitely provide the best of the best here for our students.
And I would say the coolest things ever with what we do with coaching is Jen and I received a text message yesterday at 5:00 from one of our students, said, my wire is pending for the Dallas duplex. This is a very surreal moment. They are closing this morning, had to share the news. And then she sends she's pending a wire for a bunch of money that she's about to get on one of the deals that we help make together. So what we love to see is when our students are taking the information that we're giving them, grasping it and running with it, and now making a business. And I think the neat thing is when we have our students who have walked away from their jobs And we don't encourage you to do that, but they want to do it because they could see it, right? I'm not like, quit your job, right? Because you signed up with us. That's not what we do. But once you start making these deals and find out the money that you can make, it is super amazing to have that effect on other people's lives, and to receive those messages are the best gifts. They really are. And it's to see us be able to help somebody and change their life, where our student helped out a seller, helped out a buyer, made some great money along the way, and gave them a heck of an education in the process. The person that they're becoming is just, it's so amazing to watch. So, we really try to make sure that our students are successful, and that's why we really pour a lot into it.
Yeah, it's so good. And one thing that you guys have not talked about, but I know because I've talked to people that you guys have coached, is that you're so into doing it the right way. It's not just, yes, you're making a lot of money, but the focus is helping everybody that it's involved gets helped. So it's not just you making the money, but the person that's selling the property, you're helping them as well. So I wanted to just make that clear, because there's so many programs and people doing different things. But if you're going to feel icky about the deal and feel like I just screw these people over, I don't feel like you guys are in the business of that. It's like everybody, because you never know, people might have another property, or they're going to tell somebody else about how you help them. So it's knowing who you're going to work with, what's the work ethic, and how am I going to feel after I work with these people, and who am I going to be able to see myself in the mirror after I do this deal? That makes sense.
Yeah, well, and that's what we've always said, is when real estate is done right, everybody should walk away winning. And we're actually chatting with a seller right now where we just did a deal with them over a year ago. They had a property in Alaska that we bought, and we did a deal with them. And now they want to sell their other home in North Carolina, and they reached back out, and now they're ready to do another deal with us. So when you see repeat, and it's usually odd to have many houses for sale, but in the situation that
we have another one too that just reached out. We had helped her 2 years ago, and now she has another house too. So yeah, I mean, if you're doing it right, people will continue to reach out.
That is so good. So good. So what do you guys have going on that you would like others to know? So I know you mentioned the Facebook group, the creativefinancingplaybook.com, anything coming up that, or were you guys going to speak that you want people to find out about it?
So if they want to learn more information, we do share on our website, the creativefinanceplaybook.com. We do have our master classes there. Like Jen said, they're reasonably priced. If you want to kind of dive deeper into education, we do put a lot of stuff. So if you just want to learn a lot of this for free, check out the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because we put it out consistently. Information of how we're able to turn deals, some recent stories that are happening. We always like to keep people, educated on there. It's a good spot to follow us there. And then if it's something where you want to dive into a little deeper, or this sounds like this is something you're like, I need this, because if you're listening, there's going to be some of you who definitely need this in your arsenal of real estate investing. Definitely reach out and we can chat about what that one-on-one coaching would look like. Because once again, it is in depth. But our goal is to make you a successful real estate investor, and the proof's in the pudding. Because once again, some of these deals that we're able to make on these gorgeous turnkey houses are absolutely amazing for everybody involved. And what I could really see the market happening in the next year, 2, 3 years, with the way the market is turning, if you don't have creative finance in your arsenal, most folks are going to really slow down or disappear. For folks who really understand this strategy, we're able to help more people now than almost ever before. This is like the prime time for knowing this. So if you've been wanting to learn about creative finance and able to how we could pay more for real estate than anybody else can, and how many other investors look at the deals that we're doing and they can't even fathom how we're able to make that deal make sense until we break down the nuts and bolts of how it works. And then they're like, wow, right? So what I've learned is the success is in the details, and it's in the small details too. So anybody can learn on YouTube, but the fine details is where we have our deep education. So the proofs, I guess, would be in the pudding, and really it is getting the best education we can. And that's why we're always constant students ourselves, and trying to surround ourselves with people who are doing amazing things and learning everything that we can.
So good. I love it. So I always ask this question of all my guests. So if you were to start again, what would you have liked to know then that you know now about your business in real estate investing?
Well, I'm sure everybody says I would have started sooner or trusted the process sooner. Definitely wouldn't have waited so long to get him out of the car business. That's for sure. And even myself having more confidence in, working on the limited belief because I didn't know more about it, and, shame on me for not being able to like educate myself a little bit better and find more people sooner. Like the Instagram community was really what, pushed us. And I loved making all of those connections through Instagram, and social media is such a place. If you can switch that mindset of like a place to just scroll and kind of entertain yourself and use it as a platform to learn and also do business on, that was really a key point for me.
And I think for me, it would be more of, it's not just taking action. Everybody always says, take action. It's really important, but taking calculated action and more of that. So I guess what I would think would be if we got into more, masterminds earlier and been surrounding ourselves with the right people earlier in the game, we'd be much further ahead now. So it's not just starting earlier, because that's important to start, right? But I think you don't want to be running in a hamster wheel, because I'm taking action, but I'm not really going anywhere, right? So it's actually getting the traction that you're going to need is the important part of the action, right? So it's traction, it's the action, but it's also calculated. So you have to learn from people who are doing things at a high level rather than just trying to learn it from the neighbor next door or, out of a book. That'll get you far. But if you really want to take it and propel yourself, I think that would be it for me.
Because it's the tricky part. Like your neighbor's probably not doing this, and even your friends and your family aren't doing this. And so it's being able to find your new community and still have your friends and family. But, if you're focusing on this, it does take another level of discipline, and you need those people around you to support you.
For sure. That is so good. Yeah. Whoever you surround with, they're definitely going to influence your outcomes. That is so awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I know that people are going to definitely flock to your YouTube channel, to the Facebook group, to the website, and really learn about creative financing. Like Joe said, there's so many opportunities to be had in the months, years to come. So definitely kind of liberate yourself from the way it's always been done. And open your mind to the possibility that there is an easier, faster, better way for everybody. So thank you so much for your time. I'm excited for what you guys have coming up, and I look forward to hopefully working with you guys in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us on.
Absolutely.